Hello, everyone, and welcome. This is the International Day of Peace, and I think that we'll start all of our gatherings together just to remind one another. I had the opportunity last night to be on the panel to welcome the Day of International Peace in Australia with some incredible presenters, and so we're going to get that material up online very shortly. But today is a very special day because we have Lucy Gray. I knew her when she was Lucy Boric and was one of my students. And it's always wonderful to be able to share what your students have accomplished through the years. And Lucy was in the Associated College's teacher training program that I directed, and she was from Beloit College, which is up in Wisconsin. Lucy has gone on to not only be a teacher at Chicago University Lab School, where another of the charter people, not charter, but the Associated Colleges person was working with her. And she's gone on from doing that to creating a couple different organizations. And I don't know if you're going to talk about that kind of transition that went from being a teacher to being this individual who now has a whole network that's really associated with not only global education, but certainly education and technology. And so, Lucy, why don't you take it from here? And you should tell no stories about me.
I have nothing but wonderful things to say about you, Marilyn. So don't worry. And
Okay.
and really the spark of my work was the ACM Urban Ed program. And so I am going to talk about that. And I do have my folder of remnants. Let me get it here. From I have this that we put together. I don't know if you're going to be able to see this, but this is a like a book of poems that my group wrote. And I still have my syllabi and everything from that program. And I haven't looked at it for a while, but we were very young and very idealistic in our 20s, and it's kind of fun to look back and look at that material. It's almost as another person. You introduced me to the concept of peace and justice. That's when I first really heard it, was during that program. So I thank you for it, and I'm going to share my screen and tell you a little bit more about what I've been up to and how I would love for everybody to get involved. You should see my slides here. First of all, I would thank you for having me, everyone. I'm really glad to be here and share with you a little bit about what we've been up to with this conference that I run called GLOW, and a little bit more than that. I would love to know where you are at, who's in the room, and what kind of work you do. Anybody want to tell me a little bit about themselves? It would be helpful for me to know what your interest is in global education.
I think that, I can start out, and I'm excited because a friend of the charters, Scarlett Lewis, and I will be sharing stage together at the conference, and somewhat excited. We're both excited about that, and I think we're going to try and bring in a couple other people to join us. But as Lucy said, I think I've been involved with global education for decades. And one of the things that I think helped to really solidify the work that we were doing is just being in a large urban area like Chicago and looking at the large number of diversity that existed in the Chicago public schools. I remember there's a a school called Sen, and it had students from 123 different countries, and many of them immigrants, a lot of them probably being undocumented, as well as those who were refugees. And so, it became very apparent that people like Lucy, who were coming in to intern in those places, needed to have a different kind of understanding about the world. And so, I went searching, and my searching led me through a Fulbright, which was wonderful, and spending time in India, which is, I guess, for me, my second home, but also to see life in a much different way. And then to start to begin the process of conceptualizing how does that make its way into training teachers, who need to know about their perspective, personal perspective that they bring into the classroom, and how that needs to be broadened, and also to understand that another area of grave concern is understanding what's going on in the planet politically, ecologically, environmentally, and that, how is it that you begin to have a new kind of language that you speak, an intercultural language, and then to look really seriously at the interdependency that exists within the world, and then also that true education is political in every aspect, and that once you begin to understand your perspective and broadening it and understanding, at least attempting to make it a priority to understand what's going on in the world, and how the world is interconnected, then you have a choice, that you need to have an education curriculum, a driving force that makes you begin to think that you need to act differently in the world. So, that was explored, and I'll stop, but I think, we began the process of exploring that in different ways. And we were real fortunate because the Rockefeller Foundation decided that what we were doing in Chicago with that program was really important, and so they supported young people who never thought about going into teaching to go. We created a program to just kind of expose them in a new way to seeing the world, and I was lucky because they just sponsored me for 3 years so that I could continue some of that work. But then we had fellowships, and Lucy, I don't remember if you were a part of
Yeah.
yeah, so you were part of that fellowship.
I came down for a spring break, probably spring of 87, maybe, and investigated not charter schools, magnet schools. And I went and interviewed Lourdes Monteagudo at Saban, somebody at Disney, and then the principal of Beasley on the South Side.
Hmm.
And that really spurred me to come back the next year to do my student teaching through the ACM. And as Marilyn noted, the neighborhood where the program was situated and where I did my student teaching was incredibly, particularly diverse for Chicago, uptown, Edgewater neighborhood. I ended up living in that neighborhood for a while after college too. And the school that I taught at, I taught 8th grade, which was not a great choice, but it was interesting. The kids came from all over. And, I had an Ethiopian, no, she was a Eritrean student that came engaged at the age of 13. I had students from Vietnam, Nigeria, you name it. It was a really diverse school. And what I remember distinctly was this exposure to things that have influenced me continually and brought me out of my suburban shell. So, for example, you and Peggy suggested all of these movies for us to watch, and I still think about some of those. We did a dimensions in multiculturalism class that was an optional thing, and we had speakers come in like I'm blanking on his name, but he did some work at lab at one point. Who he oh, what is his name? He went from Zimbabwe into South Africa underneath the beds of trucks to do work during apartheid. Sanctuary movement people. You had all sorts of really interesting, fascinating people. We met Stud Sturkle at an event in Chicago, and so it was experiential learning. And exposing us to a larger worldview. The other piece of it that I'll take from that, Marilyn, too, is you all said the world is changing, and it's going to be much more multicultural, or the U.S. in particular is going to be much more. The demographics are changing, and I don't think everyone has predicted that. Like I think we're seeing that now, and it's awesome. But back then, back in 1988, when I did my student teaching, that was something that I think people were really not looking at the longitudinal picture in terms of demographics and how this particular country it was shifting. And so I just think it's really a lot of what you said back then makes sense now in light of the current climate and that sort of thing. And this kind of work is the other thing I'll add to this is that this kind of work is more important than ever. But here in the US, I'm feeling like there's less interest in global for a number of reasons. And that's distressing to me. So I wish the ACM program still existed because I think there's a real need for it. And it was incredibly powerful in my life.
So why don't you
I'll keep going, but if anybody wants to, Ole and Gard, where are you from? You want to tell me a little bit about you too before I get started here?
Sure. I am in Stockholm, Sweden. I work, I have two passions. One is to help people to come together in small, intimate groups to support each other in their higher purpose in life. Like kind of a small support team. And the other is to connect people of shared interest to come together around their shared life purpose. And we are in the charter, we have 12 sectors, and education is a very, very important sector to form how society develops. So I took the opportunity to come to the forum today to listen to you and see what you have to talk about in terms of actionable things.
Great. I'm glad to meet you and happy to have you here. And hopefully you'll want to join in our crazy event that's coming up. And Gard, where are you located?
I'm in Las Vegas, and I teach at UNLV, which is considered to be the most diverse university on the planet.
Oh, you were at the banquet. Yes.
Yes.
I saw you speak. Yes, that's very exciting. I loved the banquet, by the way. It was amazing. And I met so many interesting people, and it was such a honor to be there. So thank you to you, Marilyn, and everyone for making that happen. It was great. Okay, so I know who you are. Okay. And Merida I've met, and Lynn I've met. And if you want to add anything, jump in anytime, because it's such a small group. We can continue the conversation informally whenever if we go off on a tangent. That's great. So here I am. This is my career trajectory from early to more recent. And this is a picture of me in Mumbai. In 2018, I went shopping with another presenter from a conference I was at. And I loved it because I loved the sign that was, she is a woman, she's a homemaker, she's trendy, she's a giver. And so I made my friend take a picture in front of this sign for me. But this is not very exciting. More exciting is, we talked a little bit about the ACM. This is the program that Marilyn started, and it came back apparently in 2011. Then I don't know what happened to it. This is the only reference I could really find to it when I Googled it. But this program has been foundational in my life and is really kind of the spark for what I'm going to be talking about today. I was a young, naive, sheltered, privileged white person growing up in the suburbs of Chicago. I had parents who were both teachers. One came from a very privileged background. One came from only person in his family to get a college education. So I had kind of a weird, I guess I would say a very sheltered worldview. I assumed everybody had a great education, had access to the kinds of things that I did at Lake Forest High School where I went. And that was just simply not the case. And this program and a woman that I babysat for, who was a former Chicago public school teacher, really were kind of influential in me eventually starting to teach in Chicago public schools. So that's kind of the impetus for a lot of this stuff. And then, I taught in Chicago public schools and I taught at the lab schools for a number of years. And in 2006, I got an award from Apple called Apple Distinguished Educator. They give it to 50 teachers a year or every 2 years. And they do it globally now for the work that they're doing with technology and education. And so in 2006, for our summer institute, we went to Europe to write a global awareness curriculum that was eventually published in something called the Apple Learning Interchange. It no longer exists, but it was another life-changing moment with, traveling with basically 60 of my, really amazing colleagues and creating digital media and exploring Berlin and Prague, and it was just amazing. And I realized during this time that and this is also when The World is Flat had come out, that book, A Whole New Mind by Dan Pink was another one that we were all talking about how do we prepare kids for their futures that we can't imagine yet. And so it was a really exciting time. It was also a time when people were starting to collaborate over social media. People were using tools like Skype. It was possible to connect classrooms, and I didn't see it happening that much. On this trip, we didn't actually visit any schools, which was, I guess in the summer it would have been hard, but it was a missed opportunity because you need to have relationships in order to do global collaborations. And I felt like there was a need to create vehicles for that. So then, so this is kind of my trajectory from in global. And that 2006 trip to Europe spurned the next thing that happened was a colleague of, an informal colleague of mine named Steve Hargadon. He was a social media kind of consultant for different groups, including a platform called Ning, N-I-N-G. And you could create your own social network with Ning. It still exists. And it was started by a woman named Gina Bianchi in Silicon Valley, and it's been sold to a couple different people since. And now Gina has another one called Mighty Bell. And Steve was kind of a consultant for them and for Blackboard Collaborate. And he started Classroom 2.0, which still exists. It's probably 90,000 educators interested in exploring new and emerging technologies. I'm not sure how active it is right now, but it's still in existence. And inspired by him, I started one too. I started a name called the Global Education Collaborative, and that has evolved into the community that we have now. It's changed its name over the years and so on and so forth, but it's still in existence. In 2010, Steve and I joined together to do a virtual conference. He wanted to do something that was impactful with my community and his community. And we started this virtual conference that I'll show you some pictures from, that was really cobbled together. There were no platforms out there that supported conferences at this time. So this was cobbled together with the Ning, with Google Calendar, with Blackboard Collaborate, and it was crazy. And Marilyn's been, presenting at it off and on, at least a couple times. And so that was in 2010. We also started adding things to our repertoire because ed tech is kind of our thing. We would have a meetup at the ISTE conference, which is the big educational technology conference in the US. We would do a day during, UN week where teachers would showcase collaborations they were doing, invite people to projects. We did a symposium 4 years, 2 with ASCD, 1 with Edmodo, and 1 with IIE. on kind of showcasing leadership, because we felt that school leaders really needed to be informed, and because they were the decision makers around global education in their schools. So we did that for a number of years. And then in 2019, Steve and I did our last Global Ed conference, and we were, funding has been an issue, which is a whole nother story. And the pandemic happened. And so we kind of went on hiatus. Steve wasn't particularly interested in revamping and reimagining the community. And so I took it and ran with it with a new set of people. And it's now called Actionable Innovations Global. And our main conference is called GLOW, or Global Learning for an Open World. So that's kind of just the trajectory of how this went. It's kind of important to know the original conference that I did with Steve. These are some screenshots that are a little fuzzy, but I wanted to show you some of the people and who have presented. This is the guy that started Make Magazine, Dale Doherty, if you're familiar with the Maker movement. He was one presenter. You can see this one is particularly appropriate for today. This is Jeremy Gilley from the UK, who's a former actor who's formed this organization called Peace One Day. They do a whole day of programming around peace that's going on right now. And so you can see, this is what Blackboard Collaborate looked like. It's very similar to tools we're using now. We partnered with organizations and they presented. This is my friend Julene talking about Polar Bears International. We also did 1 year Polar Bears International streamed from their tundra buggy, and we could see polar bears on the outside of the tundra buggy. It was kind of cool. And we've had people that are really interesting. Educators. This is Jennifer Klein, who is a consultant and has written several books on global education. She's based in Colorado and has done all sorts of interesting things. So here she is. Every year she presents. Michael Furtick, who is somebody I would love for the charter to get to know. He is the head of Taking It Global, which is an organization in Canada that does a lot of work with youth. He's been a really terrific partner with us over the years. Most recently, they funded micro grants to young people to do community-oriented projects. He's just amazing. You have to meet him. Another amazing educator that has graced our rooms is Erin Towns, who's a history teacher in Maine that I met at a conference. And she is a Grosvenor Fellow through National Geographic and has done all sorts of fellowships. And she just spent like the summer in somewhere up north doing scientific research. And she's just an amazing inspirational figure for educators. Who else do we have here? This is Rana Dajani, who has a nonprofit in Jordan that encourages people to read to children. I think she's spoken twice at our conference, and she's another amazing educator. Sometimes we've had people come together in collaborative ways. This is a group of higher ed professors, teacher educators who have done a lot of work over the years together and typically present every year. I don't know if they will this year. But this is kind of what it looks like. At the start of every session, we also used to do this map in Blackboard Collaborate to show where people were from. And it was a really great way to kind of start a session and bring everybody together and get a sense of place during the event. Behind the scenes, this is what our schedule looked like in Google Calendar. The green were kind of super moderators. The yellow were volunteer moderators, and the orange were the sessions that were going on at each hour. And Steve had this, he was a little bit more adept with HTML than I was, and he was able to create a calendar for every time zone and embed it on our site so that people didn't have to do any time zone conversions and that sort of thing. Nowadays, we use Hopin. And Hopin does it automatically, thank God, because it's just it was a lot of manual work here. But this is what it used to look like. And now Glow is a little bit more fancy. It's a lot easier to run. I'm basically the one pulling the strings behind everything. And we brought it back last year and as Glow, and we had about 1,800 participants. 140 presentations. And it went really, really well, incredibly smoothly, given the new platform that we were using. And so we're doing it again this year. And I want to show you a little bit about who's coming, what you can do to get involved, how things have changed. And I would love anyone that's involved with the charter to be part of this and to present. Our main group is called Actionable Innovations Global now, and our mission has shifted a little bit. And really, this is kind of like the crux of it is, we connect and empower education-focused professionals worldwide through international professional learning and networking opportunities. Our aim is to change the world by providing meaningful and impactful learning experiences for all learners in support of the UN Development Goals. That's kind of my elevator pitch to people, is this is what we do. One of the things with GLOW in particular has been that we want this conference not to be super high bar, super exclusive, super formal. We want it to be a fairly low bar, of entry for people. And so as long as proposals are relatively coherent and they're addressing global in some way and or innovative education practices, we generally accept proposals. And what we've seen over the years is that it's really empowered people to be able to share their passions, what their interests are, and to connect with others. And I think particularly of this one scenario, we had a presenter from Oman who didn't show up for his session. This is a number of years ago. And we had a great moderator volunteer named Anne Merchant from Australia. And Anne, he came into our volunteer lounge. It's a virtual space, and late. And Anne said, I think you should record, even though there won't be an audience there because you missed your scheduled time. And so she took him into a session room and had him record it. And it turns out he was in his full regalia, outfit from reflecting his culture. He was in an internet cafe. He had gone to great lengths to be able to present. And so I think it meant a lot to him, and it meant a lot to me to see how Anne coached him through this process, and he successfully presented, and it was recorded for people to watch later on. Part of this has been for presenters is to kind of, if they haven't done this sort of thing before, this is a confidence boosting event, and they can and it's this really nice to see people who are nervous about this whole thing to begin with kind of shine and learn a new set of skills that they are really proud of when they're done with the whole thing. So the whole process has gotten a lot easier, and I'll get into that a little bit. But this is a little bit about actionable innovations, and GLOW is the outcome of it. Whoops. And I don't seem to be able to drive my slides. So by the numbers, as I mentioned, we have 1,800 people, 97 countries last year represented. We had tons of volunteers. We had 12 partner organizations, and the average time spent on our platform was 4 hours and 32 minutes. So these are some of the countries that were represented. It's a lot of text. I'm not going to bore you with that. And this is what's going on with the conference this year. We inspired actually by the charter, because I like this model of pay what you can for workshops and that sort of thing. We've moved to a pay what you can model. We have no magic source of funding. We are not officially a nonprofit, but Taking It Global is our fiscal sponsor. So if somebody wanted to support the conference, they could through Taking It Global. That part of it has been finding a business model or operating model for this kind of work has been tricky, because we're not a formal nonprofit, and here in the US, they're not entities that really fund this kind of thing. If you're in Europe, there's Erasmus money or EU money, typically for global citizenship type of works. We don't really have that here. And the big foundations, as Marilyn can probably tell you, tend to fund what they want to fund. And global doesn't seem to be something that's of interest. So I think part of it is also learning how to integrate global education into other subject areas so that it's appealing to funders, but that's a whole nother conversation. So, so this year we're moving to pay what you can because we want this to be accessible to everyone. Individuals and nonprofit organizations can submit as many proposals as they choose. For profits, we ask them to support the conference because we think that's, if they're going to be partaking in this event, they have the means to do that. Our benefactors, or is what we call our sponsors, can build their own booths. There's dedicated time for the booths aside from our sessions. And we're also going to experiment with a new aspect of Hop-In that is where people can build their own sessions on the fly. And we're going to do a little bit of that at one point. We also have stages, we have two different kinds of rooms in Hop-In, which I won't bore you with. One is a general session room, which is kind of like a Zoom room and it's collaborative. And then we have stages, which are a little bit more higher profile. And so we're going to have different stages this year where our keynotes are going to be, our partner presentations are going to be, and we're going to have a Spanish track probably in stages. I can talk a little bit more about that technically, but it's not very exciting. This is a little bit about our pay what you can model. And, I think I've already kind of gone over this, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time with it. If you want to attend, I'll give you the link to it and in a flyer with more information. You can register at whatever level your company comfortable with, but some of the features, the benefits are not going to be available at the free level necessarily. All the keynotes will be up on our YouTube channel, which is, I can share with you as well. We have, unfortunately, with our previous version of this conference, we used Blackboard Collaborate and all the sessions were archived on our site or linked on our site to Blackboard Collaborate. And my partner, Steve, who used to handle that end of the conference, didn't receive notice from Blackboard Collaborate that they were sunsetting that tool. And so a year or two ago, I want to say it's 2 years ago now, all of those sessions that I didn't put in YouTube went away. So it was a credible archive for people to browse. And so we at least have keynotes from 2010 in one of our YouTube channels. But anyway, it was kind of devastating to me to know that this happened. All this great content went away. So that's kind of what it's like from an attendee perspective. We have volunteers that can help out for a couple hours, moderating sessions, hanging out in our volunteer lounge to troubleshoot things. And that's another ticket option for people. And they receive a certificate and the recordings and all that as well. And the volunteers have been one of the best parts of the conference too. It's a really great way to get to know people. We have this volunteer lounge where people are assigned sessions to go moderate, and people just kind of hang out there all day and chit chat with each other and get to know each other, and these bonds form. And the same people I don't hear from some people all year, and then they pop up for volunteering during the conference, which is it's really nice to see them year after year. So it's a really great way. And a lot of people are going to be watching sessions anyway, so they might as well moderate one. And it's turned out to be a really nice experience. Our call for proposals is due, it ends November 1st. We'll do trainings for people in October. And, the call for proposals is pretty detailed. One of the things that's specific about it is we ask people to give some actionable advice, meaning if you present your idea or program or whatever, what is the next thing or that you want people to do? What is your advice for them to get started with replicating your program or your project? Or are you going to issue an invitation to do something? We want something practical to come out of these sessions. So it could be recommending books. It could be if you have a globally connected project that you're doing with your students, it could be an invitation to others, teachers and students to join in. It could be if you're doing, for the, in terms of the charter, maybe it would be an invitation to join this forum in the future, or to attend the global read alouds, that kind of thing. So we want practical ideas. That's a big part of the call for proposals. The other piece is, it would be really lovely, not everybody kind of gets this. This is still kind of a new concept to people, but tying into global competence or global citizenship in some way is also beneficial. And I mention this because it means different things to different people. And so as long as something is tangentially kind of globally related, that's great. Some of our sessions, some of our sessions that are proposed kind of miss this, but it's okay, because we're really kind of trying to focus on innovative practices in general. And it's nice if it has a global aspect to it, but it's not necessarily required. The idea of global competence, for some reason in the US, we seem to not use the term global citizenship. Global competence comes, at least in my understanding, from the Asia Society's work. Tony Jackson and Veronica Boinks-Mancia, who's going to be one of our keynotes this year, have crafted a lot of language around it and have written books about it as part of the Asia Society's work. And that's been translated into the OECD's PISA test on global citizenship, which I don't know the status of that right now, but before the pandemic, that was piloted. And so the 4 pillars that are basically part of that model of global competence, and there are other ones out there. They're investigate the world, recognize perspectives, communicate ideas, and take action. And I think if you look at that, these 4 pillars, it's easy for teachers to integrate a global, global learning into their classrooms if they kind of apply those 4 ideas. There are a couple of links here too, if you are not familiar with this, and you can check out their models. In terms of the tips for the proposals, we're looking at, these are just some kind of basic things here. It doesn't have to be a super formal proposal. Again, I think helping, whatever someone proposes, it should be enticing to potential attendees. And I think the better crafted the proposal, the more likely people are to attend. If it's vague and not clear, then I don't think people are attracted to it. So that's just kind of my general recommendation with it. We encourage people to present in other languages. We will have a Spanish track for sure. We have a group in Argentina that kind of runs that. And we hope that people will make these sessions interactive. It doesn't have to be a presentation like this. It could be a panel discussion. It could be a birds of a feather session where you're looking for interested people in a particular topic. We're open to creative ideas. And then I'm kind of reiterating what I've already babbled about, but this is not a general education conference. I think that's the other important thing to know. It's not all about math or literacy. It's really about, global competence and innovative educational practices, experiential learning, travel abroad, whatever it is, something that's kind of related to those topics. These are some examples of presentations in the last couple of years that people have submitted proposals for. And so, anything along these lines is fine. The global dimension of mathematics, I believe, was a presentation from a Fulbright program participant here in the US. There's a particular program that works with teachers on global competence, and then they all go on a trip together. And she was one of the participants. And she's also been a participant in a similar program with the NEA Foundation, which I do some work with. So these are some examples of things. We also love it when students present. And last year we had a great group from the Global Internet Field Trip of students who were just amazing, who did a panel discussion. So if teachers or organizations have youth that they're working with and they want to give them a platform, we encourage co-presenting in that kind of manner. So, everybody loves to hear from students in particular. So I would love to see more of those kinds of things. This is a little bit of information about partnerships. The deadline for that is November 1st. This is not terribly exciting. If everyone could help by, registering to volunteer, submitting a proposal, sharing our information on social media, and I'll give you that in a minute. And there's a flyer that I also will put in the chat for you as well. The more the merrier in helping to get the word out, the more of this community will it's magical if you get involved. That's all I'm going to say. So our keynotes we have several keynotes coming up. This is, she just confirmed with me yesterday. Veronica is one of the architects of Global Competence. She's running a book with Tony Jackson. She's a principal investigator at Project Zero at Harvard, and just a lovely human being. And she's worked with school districts and all sorts of different organizations around this topic. And so she's going to be our opening keynote at noon Central Time on November 13th. After her, we have a woman who works with organizations to help them go international. And she's a little bit different. She's not necessarily talking about education. She's talking about nonprofit organizations and that sort of thing. And she's actually the mother of two of my former students from lab. So I'm really excited to have her. She's also the author of a book that I have. This woman I just connected with last night. She is on our advisory board and is a professor in Australia. And she's going to be convening a panel on global citizenship. And she's amazing. So I'm really looking forward to that. So I don't have her picture and everything up yet. You may be familiar with 100 in Finland. 100, it showcases 100 innovations in education every year. They have a summit in Helsinki. It's also virtual at the end of October, beginning of November. I am an 100 ambassador, which means I advocate and promote their work. I think they're pretty. They also showcase things like game-based learning, or they also do work for individual countries showcasing different innovations as well. And I went to their conference in 2018, I think, in Helsinki, and thought it was one of the most valuable professional development experiences I've ever had. It was interactive. There was youth involved. It was inspiring. We went, we saw the Udi library in Helsinki and that sort of thing, and got to visit some schools, which is always my favorite thing to do. So the executive director of 100 is going to be one of our speakers. I'm really excited to hear what's been going on with them since the pandemic and what they have coming on board. So he'll be super early in the morning on the 14th. Matt Nink is somebody that I've introduced to the charter. I think this is a great partnership. Sky Schools might be a great partner for you guys in terms of social emotional learning and breath work and that sort of thing. That's kind of their specialty. And I've known Matt for a long time. He's worked in global education in a number of different ways over the years. And I'm excited to hear about, this is a relatively new gig for him. So I'm excited to hear more about what he's doing with Sky Schools. There's some festival going on maybe this weekend in DC that he's involved with. And so he's been quite busy with that. So hopefully I will catch up with him when that's over. Shane Swift and Karen Venable Croft have started a school called Girls Global Academy in DC, in Washington, DC area. And they were supposed to present last year. They're presenting this year. They had an emergency last year. And so we're bringing them back. There's Marilyn. Marilyn's going to be doing the closing panel, which I think will be the perfect icing on the cake at 6 o'clock Central on the 14th. Oops. And then we have one more. Jesse Wise is the executive director of a travel group that's nonprofit in Pennsylvania. And they take teachers on various trips. It takes 60 to 70 trips a year. I have a friend who's been on 6 of these trips and loved every minute of it. Teachers can earn credit from going on these. And I'm hoping to lead a trip to Iceland with teachers that are involved with our conference next July, and we're going to announce it at the conference. I don't know if people will be, will join in on it or not, but my hope is to go on this trip and help teachers learn to use digital media to tell the story of their experiences while traveling abroad. That's my hope. We'll see if that happens. It's kind of a big experiment. So anyway, those are our keynotes. And I want to stop now, and that's a lot of information and me talking too much. So I'm wondering if you guys have any other questions for me, and any suggestions. What I would also love too is suggestions of we really would like to get the word out to. It's still very US centric, unfortunately, and I would really love, particularly with the global South, to get more connected and get the word out. And I'm open to any suggestions, feedback, questions that you have.
I have a lot, but I know that Ole is probably just burning with questions because of what we've been talking about for the last couple of weeks.
Well, there are a couple of things that just come to mind. One is, I forget his name. He was talking on this in this forum half a year ago about peace education. Do you remember? He is ex-military, went to West Point.
Yes, I do. Lynn from Oregon. We had him for 40 Days of Peace.
Yeah. Yep.
He has the organization. It has a lot of curriculum, but I think he's more of a charismatic figure. And anyway, we can find it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he's doing kind of social emotional learning with the help of virtual reality in classrooms, educating teachers to then take it to their students. So he's an ex-military, and he thinks we should have an education, peace education that is comparable to the military education.
That's interesting.
So I think he's a real innovator in terms of kind of education that could be a presenter in your conference. That was the first thought. I'll let somebody else come in.
Yeah, I just some feedback on that. What I love about this is that what technology can do for us now. Obviously, we prefer to be in person, right? We would like to be. There's something that you can't replicate virtually, but in the name of sustainability, in the name of practicality, we have the technology now to work across borders and to do things, and I think we've proven that, right, over the pandemic. And so what's exciting to me is when people can build. I think I'm like you, in the sense that I'm a connector. I like saying, and Marilyn's like this too. If I hear about somebody, I'm like, oh, you need to meet that person. And so this is that kind of, if you're not necessarily naturally like that, you come to this conference and you get immersed in it. And there's tools for pinging people in our platform, but then also in the chats of all the sessions, people like really connect there. And we had two teachers one from Milwaukee and one from Mexico, who met in our rooms and started doing global collaborative projects together. And and now we've all met in person. Like, they had a conference at the school in Milwaukee, and the guy from Mexico came, and we all met in person, and it was great. So, I don't like the word networking. I don't see myself as a networker. It feels kind of deliberate and whatever. This is like a really natural, organic way to kind of meet people.
Yeah, I'm thinking in terms of he has innovations that is useful for education in the world.
Yeah.
the virtual reality stuff is used in physical classrooms. But the students get to experience a situation which is problematic, and it's a little bit like crossing borders using VR glasses.
Oh, interesting. That's a good analogy. I'll have to look them up.
Yeah. So, and where is when and where is the conference?
It's online. It's completely online. It's virtual. Let me get you the flyer and everything. It is it's November 13th and 14th in US time zones, but it goes around the clock. The whole idea is that you can present in a time that is friendly for you. Because so it's busiest during the US time zones in general, but it you know, we need more participation from, particularly from Australia, Asia, in order to kind of make it go around the clock. So that's a flyer. That's kind of a public facing type of thing. And then I have an overview that is a little bit more detailed. It may put you to sleep, but I'll share it in case. Let me get that link here. And that's the document that has kind of an overview of things.
I think that we can help with spreading the word. I'm thinking that, like last night, our Australia team opened International Peace Day with I don't know how many hours of programming. I think the intent was something like 10, but I believe that we can send them this information, send the recording here, and just to see a number of people who are on the team are academics, and so they have automatic reach to a lot of educators. So I think that's one thing, but I'd love to send this also to, you know, our board, but particularly our younger board members who are all involved in education from, you know, continent of Africa to India, and also hopefully with our new potential board members, younger people in the Netherlands and Jordan, Mexico. So we promise to do that, but I promise to introduce you to a lot of people in Iceland because of, you know, having been involved twice now with the Spirit of Humanity. There are some incredible educators, both at the elementary, secondary level as well as university, but a lot of different organizations. And one very interesting person who is originally from Sweden, but now lives in Iceland, who wants to be involved in this kind of work. So
That'd be
that's
great.
so.
So here's the other thing too, is you can register as a media partner too, and we'll put the charter's logo and link on the site as well. So it's one of the options. I think it mentions it in the Google Doc here. But when you and there's a special link, it's hidden, it's not overt when you register, unless you use the special link that's in that document. And I should probably make it more obvious, but
I'm just wondering, and we would love if we could have a period of time within the conference, but not only once, but if we might have a dedicated room for the map of co-creators and also for the wisdom book. And, you know, it might be a lounge area or where we could actually get people, because it's been my experience, I'm not going to talk for others, that it's more important to physically get people on the map and to, you know, maybe in small groups, and to show them how they can, you know, bring their passion up to the forefront and make connections with other people. And then
Yeah.
to maybe highlight a couple stories from grassroots wisdom, which would be their stories that could be duplicated in other places in the world. I think that, and the other connection, this really puts a lot of pressure on us, but it's okay, because we will have them, hopefully we'll have the map for schools,
Yeah.
so that schools can interact with one another.
And schools love that kind of thing. I
Yeah.
think that's always a big thing. Can I show you what the platform looks like?
Yeah.
Because I think that might also be helpful for you to see. So the other piece of this too is our main community is here. And I'll throw that in the chat. And this is the original Ning that I've redone. And it's not, and theoretically people can go in there and post anything and we'll share it out on social media or whatever. Nobody wants to do that. So it's kind of dead. But and I'm trying to figure out, do we move to something else? I'm kind of tired of paying for this and not having it be particularly active. So this is, if you click and go in here, this is our community where I house everything. So that's one thing I wanted to show you. The actual hop-in platform where the conference is and where you register, I'll show you the back end of it and the front end of it a little bit. So Hop-In was just bought by Ring Central. And before that, Hop-In had bought a company called StreamYard. So StreamYard's involved with this. You can see here we have 137 people registered right now. Hopefully that will be going up. Usually people are waiting to the last minute. This is what it looks like on the back end. But I can show you, I can preview the event for you so you can see some of the things. There are some networking tools in here that might be useful to you as well. So this is what it looks like when you go into an event. And on the left-hand side, there's navigation. The little house icon is kind of the main page. It's called the I don't know what it's called. There's a name for it. Home page, I'll say for right now that I'm blanking on it. And when you're on this home page or reception page, that's what it is. You can scroll down and you can see the schedule and that sort of thing. The schedule is not public yet, but you can see this is what it would look like theoretically if it was live for you. And so people can browse the schedule. They can browse the speakers, and connect with them and that sort of thing, right from this main page. On the right-hand side, there's going to be a chat for the whole event. So lots of people promote their sessions or ask questions here. We can do polls. There's a Q&A section in there. You can also bookmark sessions that you want to go to, and it pops up in here for my agenda. And then for our keynotes, we highlight them as recommended, so they pop up in everybody's agenda, which is kind of nice. And then there's things like you can do your own personal profile, which we recommend. It's a little different than the speaker profile, but you can kind of customize how, your information so that people can network with you. So that's kind of what it looks like. The stages are powered by StreamYard, and people enter a backstage, which I will show you how to do, Marilyn, when we get closer.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's session rooms, and session rooms are more like a Zoom room. They don't need a lot of supervision from somebody, putting them on stage or anything like that. And they look like this. You have to click on share audio and video, and we can make a room. Open all day if you want people to, drop in and chat or whatever. There's also a way to do a call to action so that there's something popping up for people to click on. And there's also a way for people to watch and not have their camera on as well. And this is a little bit more self-sufficient than being on a stage. So that's kind of what it looks like from a session thing. And then everybody has the ability. There's a speed networking tool where people can do like quick meetings with people. It's kind of like speed dating. People tend to be a little shy with that, but if you go to, let's see, let me go back to the reception page. When you look at people, so here's my profile. I have too many things going on here. I can send, I need to do this with somebody else, that's not me. Hang on. Come back here, chat. People. All right, so I'll pick this person. So so I could invite him to a video call. I could schedule a meeting. I can send him a message. So there's the ability to host. And when you schedule a meeting, you can have, I think, several people involved with it. I think you can have 8 people involved. So that's my advice to you also would be to really kind of, we'll open up the conference site probably the week before, is to go in and look at people's profiles and send them messages and try to schedule stuff during the conference. People who look like they might be good candidates for it, and that you can use your own thing, or it says on-site location. I think you can create a meeting room. No, we don't want to do on-site because we're not, it's not, it has to be virtual. And I'm pretty sure it gives you a room to do it in. You don't have to use your own Zoom room.
Oh, okay.
So I want to do some more education of the community in general before the conference starts about some of these tools and how people can leverage them. And I, again, like it's, I think, any conference you go to, you need to prepare to, you have to look at the catalog or the program and figure out what you're going to do when, and you want to see who the speakers are. You want to see who's going to be attending so you can be aware of them to make the most of your experience. And it's the same thing with a virtual one. You have to kind of do a little bit of prep work in order to make sure you're covering all your bases. So anyway, that's a little bit of what it looks like. There will be an expo area for booths for our partners. And the new thing is that we have an upgraded platform from last year. I don't have to build the booth for everyone. It's they can build it themselves, which is nice. And then there's a replay area, which is where the recordings will be for a year or 6 months, I think is what we have it for. And we'll take the recordings from the keynotes and we'll put them up on our YouTube channel. It's too hard to, we don't have the manpower to download everybody's and upload them somewhere, frankly. So, so people have to watch it on the platform. And I don't find people going back and watching a lot of recordings in general. I think it's just too much for people.
So Lucy, you mentioned when you pay for hop on, is it for a period of time? Is it for?
I bought a license for it. I paid $14,000 for it for a year. And it was a little bit less last year. We have more features this year. Supposedly it's a nonprofit rate.
So
and I looked at other platforms and I didn't find them to be, I found them to be more expensive. The group seems to be trying to be the Zoom of video conferencing. They want people to, sorry, my phone is going off. They want people to, the other thing that we can do for people, by the way, is we can rebrand, I can do as many events as I want to on this platform in between now and July. I do webinars on them all the time. And and the other piece with the webinars is I have a StreamYard account that meshes with this. And so I can broadcast to social media, to 8 different channels on social media through StreamYard when we do our webinars. And we'll probably do that with our keynotes as well this time. So they have a whole community of hop-in users that they want them to kind of relicense themselves for other entities. So like for the NEA Foundation, we did their Global Learning Ed Camp last spring. We're going to do an ed tech conference for a group called Educational Collaborators in February, I think. We can create other events and make it completely branded somewhat, and that doesn't have to be Actionable Innovations Global.
Sure.
And we have kind of a pricing for that. If you were going to do a 3-day conference on your own with Hopin, I was told that it would be $6,000.
Yeah.
Because I thought, well, maybe we'll pay by the event. And they said it's to your advantage to do more events and to buy the whole license.
So you basically sublease.
Yes.
Because I know that Encuentro looked at Hopin and Hop On. Is it Hop In or Hop On?
Hopin.
Okay. And I think the price tag was more like 10,000 that they were quoting. But it's interesting because all of a sudden some of our sectors are at a point of maybe not being as elaborate as what you're doing.
Yeah.
But for example, our healthcare chat group that meets monthly are talking about actually having something that might be a conference within a reasonable one day. But to help people really look more deeply at what they're doing as individuals and as organizations. And also I anticipate that, we have used something which, open space technology for our youth conferences, which I think is great, but I think that it works so much better when you're together. And I think that I'm going to take this recording and send it to our youth group, but also to Arun, who's on our board, who runs individual sessions with youth. So I think that this was the platform itself is really wonderful, but I'm so impressed with the different organizations that are coming and how is it that we can really talk with one another. I know the power of the Asia Society, having been a part of them for a number of years before changing careers.
They're not doing as much education work though. I think they're focusing on Chinese language education. That's my understanding. And
okay.
and their global competence work is still on their website, but they used to have a really great conference.
Yeah, they did.
They had a network of schools that they somehow moved to another organization. And there's nothing like that now. So the other group that might be of interest to you too is that seems to have kind of a leadership role and Veronica is on their board, is the Longview Foundation. And they do small grants for organizations. They've had a teacher education fellowship. We had 2 teachers. I interviewed Jennifer Manise, who's the executive director, and 2 of the teachers that were fellows last year, who were phenomenal. One is from maybe St. Louis University, another one's from Xavier in Ohio, and they were amazing. So they seem to, that's the one funder that I know of, really. The other place that funding is coming from for groups, which is I don't think we really qualify for, is the Stevens Initiative, named after Chris Stevens, from the Aspen Institute. It's a virtual exchange entity, and they have a big grant competition going on right now for virtual exchange stuff. So if your youth programming ever wanted to move in that direction, that might be a way to go. The other thing I will also mention is I curate a lot of, let me show you 2 more things. If I can. One is, let me show you so StreamYard is built into our stages for the conference. And I'm just going to go right into StreamYard to show you what it looks like, because this also might be, just so you know how tools work, this might be interesting to you on your own to, to get a license for this. So we're doing a webinar on September 27th with the guy that does the travel nonprofit and some friends who just were in Bhutan. And he was also in Bhutan. So we're gonna have a discussion about what they learned there. And this is what it looks like on the back end to go in. And when you go into StreamYard, you're not on screen right away. Somebody with admin privileges has to put you up on the screen. And then there's ways to put up your slides and different, you can see here different setups for the slides. I can pull up slides right here. There are different ways to look at things. And there's a chat, and it's pretty simple. But the way I have it set up, is I can broadcast to all these different channels with one click. So it's set up, and this webinar next week will be broadcast to LinkedIn Live, to YouTube, to Hopin, whatever. So that's one thing I want to show you, just so you get your mind wrapped around how the stages work. This is the back end of it. The front end of it looks a little bit different. It's basically a screen and a chat, and you access it through Hopin. Here you access it through a special link. But I really, really, really like StreamYard. I think it works really nicely. I've never had any problems with it. And I like the fact that I can put it in several places and not have to worry about it. It took me a while to figure out how to do this, but I now have it down somewhat to a science. The other thing that I would like to leave you guys with too is I curate global resources that might be of interest to people. And one of the collections is our global, here's, I meant to put that in earlier. This is the collection. And so for example,
Yeah. Slow down a little bit.
Yeah, sorry. So these are this is a tool that's out of the UK called Wakelet, and it lets you bookmark things, websites to it. And what I've tried to do is organize resources for educators in different groups and different collections, and they're all in this space. So for example, this is a resource when I see things that are related to Ukraine. I use a little bookmarking tool, that little W there, to bookmark it into here. And then there's a whole list of stuff related to Ukraine and education.
So what is this tool called?
It's called Wakelet, like Wakelet. And it looks kind of like Pinterest, you can change the view of it. You can make it more of a list if you want, as opposed to this dashboardy kind of thing. But if you're looking to connect with more organizations in my collections, I have organizations, global education organizations working with schools, intercultural organizations. I have things, there are a lot in here. I tend to be a little overwhelming, people, so I'm sorry if I am. But this, if you're looking for other organizations that might want to be part of it, you're more than welcome to go in here and say, oh, Green Schools National Network, we should reach out to them, or whatever, and look and see, what organizations I've come across. I've really tried hard to connect with a lot of them in some way. There's a tool that I use called Rocket Reach, which I pay for, which will harvest email addresses from like LinkedIn profiles or websites. So I've sent emails from that, trying to get people I don't know involved with the conference. I've also used Twitter quite a bit, which I know that's controversial because of Elon. But I have a whole list too in Twitter of global education organizations. And what I did is I pestered them through sending and I'll give you the list here. Giving them, so this is a list I curate of organizations that I've come across. And I can look at their tweets, but I've also sent them direct messages saying, hey, we've got this conference going on. Please, consider submitting something. And sometimes people respond, sometimes they don't. It's a really big list, so don't get overwhelmed. But if you click on the members here, you can see who those groups are, and either follow them or add them, figure out how you can contact them. One of these, for example, here, Project Accelerus is a STEM group. I met the executive director at a conference, and I just added them to the list, and they're actually going to be one of our benefactors this year. So anyway, I've been tracking resources in organizations and saving them in this list and in Wakelet for years. And so, it's all public, it's all open, anyone else is welcome to use it. It's it's overwhelming, but it's there. If you want to do your research and dig in around things, you're more than welcome to look at that stuff.
I'm seeing Ulla's hand up.
Yeah.
Yeah, there were two things. Well, actually now three things, but start with the last one. It's a fantastic list, and we are building up a education sector team.
Okay.
And to from our perspective, try to promote good education, and they could maybe work with you on that.
Yeah.
But that just came up. You mentioned Arun in Maryland with the perspective of youth, but I think also for compassionate schools, they have a network of fantastic educators in India, and they have also compassionate schools. I think is it 3,000 or 4,000 schools, compassionate schools that they're connected to, that we're trying to get to the map. If you
it would be great to have, even like one of those schools to present, would be amazing.
And the final thing, I will share screen, and I'm not sure if you have seen the map of co-creators.
No.
Okay, so here is the people.
Now I do. Yeah.
Yeah, and we can filter out those who are interested in education. So here are people who are interested in education. We can, and that's, well, this is primary interest. This is everybody who are interested in education, also as a secondary interest, but let's keep primary interest. Maybe we take away parents before birth, and maybe we take away non-schooling. And so here are the people who are interested in basic education. And for each person, you can check them out and say, okay, here is Don McDonald, mindfulnessandwellbeing.com, adult transformative education. And you can select as many as you like, and that you think could be interesting.
Yeah. Is there there's no, I can do as many as I want and send one invitation?
Exactly. So you can promote your conference by selecting these people here, inviting them to Glow.
Okay. That's awesome.
I'm thinking also vice versa, that Glow doesn't last forever. The map lasts forever.
Yeah.
So if people want to make themselves visible, to work with other heart-centered people, they can be visible on the map to be contacted for initiatives, or to reach out to others to take initiatives.
Yeah.
And you can zoom in right down to your community and see is there anybody else in my community who's interested in the same things that I am, and start to get some local action going.
And the trick with this networking stuff too is that you have to have, for global projects in schools, you have to have, a concentrated population of people participating. Like I found when I was in the classroom and I tried to do classroom projects through like little bitty organizations, I would put up my project and then hope that somebody would find it and respond, and that didn't really happen. And so that critical mass of people, like, it's so important, and it's hard these days to build that critical mass because teachers are tired. At least here in the US, they're really beleaguered. Teachers are getting fired for teaching Anne Frank. Unbelievable. I know, isn't it unbelievable? I know you're probably like glad to be in Sweden and not here. So it's so getting people to be participatory, like 10, 15 years ago, people were all over this kind of stuff. And now it's I don't know if it's because they're over networked or tired or just discouraged. Like, I feel like the hope and inspiration piece is where we should be focusing with students and with kids, because that's what motivates people, right? Who cares about learning loss? Like, let's get people hopeful again,
Yeah. Well,
it's such an interesting time that we're living in.
yes. We're almost out of time, and I mean, it's incredible what a resource you are, and all of the resources that you've gathered. But for example, that the StreamYard is just wonderful. But I wish that Felipe was here. We're going to make him watch this, because I think that the StreamYard is something that he should be looking at, because he does this program on Facebook, but how much more extensive it could be. The other thing is that the Wakelet.
Wakelet, yeah.
I have a feeling that might be something that we're going to want to look at for presenting our partners. It's a whole different way of organizing, but also getting the partner pages to make sense. So thank you for that.
And you can embed them on web pages too, which is nice. So Wakelet, I love it. They've started charging, and I don't pay for anything yet. Like, I don't know what their model is now, but it was completely free for a while. And my big problem with ed tech in general is when tools are free and then they switch to being paid. I just don't think that's fair, and so I don't know. I know that they need to make there's a business model there. And I don't know what part is free now and what isn't.
Yeah.
That's the tricky part. But I feel like it's flexible, it's easy. I like to be able to bookmark things on the fly, and it has a little Chrome extension. And so I come across something and boom, it goes into a collection, and it works really well for me. And so I just keep gathering stuff as I read, as I surf, as I look at things. And so it's a pretty smooth process, but for some people it's not that easy. What I would use for a lot of things is not what necessarily would be best for everyone. Like, right now I'm going through a process with my board members at Beloit's Alumni Board about communication strategy, and it's hard. So
yeah. Okay, well, we should definitely thank you. I see that Ola has to go, but I'm wondering, Lucy, if you could just stay on for a couple minutes. I have a few minutes. Do you have a few?
Yep, I do.
Thank you very much, Lucy. Exciting.
Well, nice to meet you. Great to meet you too, Merida, and nice to see you, Lynn. And hopefully come to the conference.
Yeah.
Yes, I'll try.
Okay.
Great presentation. Thanks very much.
Thanks for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Okay, and we'll get this out, we promise.
Okay. You're